Hi, and welcome to this video in our series about IGCSE computer science. And today, what we're going to do is we're going to explore cascading style sheets and how to um, use a cascading style sheet to format our web page. Okay, so we're going to start with a quick recall to retain question, as we always do. All right, so what I'm going to ask you to do now you can see the question is I'm going to ask you to pause for a minute or two and have a go at answering the question yourself, and then we'll go through it. Okay, so pause now. All right, so hopefully you paused. Okay, and let's go through it now. So the first bit says the user enters the URL of the website. The what uses the DNS server to look up the what of the website. Okay, so what's it going to be? So of course it's going to be browser in here. So the browser uses the DNS server to look up the what, and of course, our computers need IP addresses, so it's going to be look up the IP address. Okay, I'm not going to write Internet Protocol address because I'm lazy. Okay, so the DNS server looks up the IP address. Sorry, the browser uses the DNS server to look up the IP address of the website. Okay, and then next we got the browser sends a request to the what to obtain the website files. Okay, well, we've talked about this in the last couple of lessons. We've said that the World Wide Web is an example of client-server architecture. Okay, so of course the browser sends a request to the server, right, is what we write in here, or specifically the web server. We need to use the keywords that they put in. All right, so the browser sends a request to the web server to obtain the website files. Right, the website files are sent as what that is interpreted by the browser. Okay, so they are sent up as hypertext markup language, and we talked about hypertext markup language and HTML in the last video. Okay, so if you can't remember talking about HTML and reviewing some tags, then please go back to that and have a look at that lesson, the last video. Okay, so we're going to move on. I've got another question for you. So again, I want you to take a minute. So pause the video for a minute. All right, just to have a go at this question. All right, and see if you can work out what the solution is. Okay, so this one's asking you about parity bits. It's asking you to work out which one is the odd one out. Okay, so take a minute. Pause now. Okay, so hopefully you pause for a minute. Hopefully you're not cheating. Okay, and we have to work out which one is the odd one out. Well, we know that before computer systems communicate, they agree on whether they're going to use odd or even parity. Okay, so if we're looking for one that is has been transmitted incorrectly, all right, then we should find that the majority of them use either odd or even parity. So we're looking for the odd one out. Okay, so what we're going to do, we've talked about this before, we're going to count the number of ones to see if we've got an odd or even number. Okay, so we'll have a look at the first one in byte one. All right, we've got a, oh, sorry, gone too far there. If we look at byte one, we've got an even number, so there are 4 there. Okay, if we look at byte 2, how many have we got? We've got 1, 2, 3, so that's got an odd number. All right, if we look at byte 3, let's have a look. That's got 1, 2, 3, 4, so that's an even number. And we look at byte 4, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so that's an even number. Okay, so the odd one out then, of course, the one that's been transmitted incorrectly, because of course it looks like we were using even parity, because we know that 1 was transmitted incorrectly. So the one that's been transmitted incorrectly is, of course, byte 2. Okay, and how do we identify? I'm not going to write down the answers to this, but how do we identify it? Well, we found out which type of parity had been used because we knew that the majority of the bytes had been sent correctly. And then once we were able to work out that it was even parity, we were then able to check and see the one that wasn't that didn't have an even number of ones. And if it hasn't got an even number of ones, then that's the one that's been transmitted incorrectly. Okay, again, if you need a review on parity, then please just put a comment in the comment section to tell me that you want me to make a video on parity, and I'll do a video going through parity. Okay, all right, let's move on. So let's just recap what we talked about. So we talked about the World Wide Web, and last lesson we learned about how to create web pages. All right, we talked about the fact that the World Wide Web is basically a lot of servers or just computer systems, okay, that we call servers. that have a permanent connection to the internet and are available 24 hours a day and 7 days a week. All right, and those servers, specifically for the World Wide Web, are just used to store pages of information. Okay, and in this situation, because we're talking about the World Wide Web, the pages of information are written in a language called HTML, which is a universal language. It means that any computer, as long as you've got a browser, okay, that any computer can be used to read that information. All right, and that's if you think about that, that's a very cool thing. Okay, it's really impressive that any computer, doesn't matter what device you're using, can access that information on the World Wide Web. Okay, so we're going to move on. We talked a little bit about HTML in the last lesson, and we talked about the fact that in HTML is made up of tags, and tags are used to basically, this is a markup language. So those tags are used just to tell the browser how you want to format the information that you've got on the web page. Okay, so we've got the HTML tag, the head tag, the title tag, and the body tag. But those are all ones that are used about the structure of the web page. And we talked about the fact that the head is just used to provide information, okay, used by the browser to find out information about the web page. Specifically, one of the things that you can find out is the title and things like that. Okay, and then we said anything in the body of the document is what you see in the browser window. Okay, and we talked about the fact that H1 is used for headings. We've got P there for paragraph, and we've got IMG for image. And we've got A, which is the one that kind of doesn't make sense, but A is for anchor, which is used to create hyperlinks. Okay, so those are the tags, and those are the tags that we use to create our web page. Okay, now what we're going to talk about today then is the fact that we're going to talk about styling a web page. Okay, so what we need to understand is that a web page is made up of 3 different layers. Okay, now it doesn't have to have all of these layers. Okay, but if we kind of want to create a web page that looks great and interacts with us, then we need all 3 layers. Okay. I mean, the essential layer that we've got here on the diagram is, of course, this one. All right, which is our content layer. Okay, and this is the layer where we add the content, as the name suggests. All right, this is where we put our information, and we know because we learnt about it in the last lesson that this is written in HTML, hypertext markup language. All right, so we use HTML to mark up our information um, and format it as we want it. Okay, now above that, then, all right, is another layer, this one here, which is called the presentation layer. Now, this is where we can change the way our information looks. All right, so this is where we can really concentrate on how the information is presented to the world. Okay, and that's done in something called a cascading style sheet. Now, we are going to talk in a minute, but I'll finish off discussing these layers first. But we are going to talk in a minute about why we separate those two. Okay, so start to think to yourself, well, why do we separate those two? Why is it important to separate the content layer from the presentation layer? Okay, why don't we just keep them both together? Something to think about. Okay, now above that presentation layer then is where we can start to add interactivity. Okay, so this layer here is concerned with us being able to create dynamic websites or web pages that interact with us. Okay, and that's called the behavior layer, and that's where we use languages like JavaScript or PHP. All right, and hopefully maybe in this unit of work we'll have an opportunity to have a go at creating some JavaScript and adding some behavior to our web pages. Okay, but the 2 layers that I want to concentrate on are these 2. Okay, so I want to concentrate on our cascading style sheet on our HTML, and I want you to take a minute. So I'm gonna pause. I want you to pause the video for a minute in a minute, and I just want you to think: why do we separate those 2? Why does it help us to separate the content from the presentation? All right, have a minute. Pause the video for a minute, and come back to me. Okay, pause. All right, hopefully you're being honest and you pause the video for a minute and you've had a think about that. Okay, why do we separate the information from the formatting? Okay, well, one of the reasons is because if you think about the amount of different devices that we use to access the World Wide Web. Okay, most of us have a phone that we use to access the World Wide Web. A phone has a small screen. Okay, then a lot of us will have a laptop or a desktop which has a bigger screen. All right, some of us might also have a tablet, or we might be accessing the World Wide Web on our TV. So we have lots of different devices with lots of different screens. Okay, now having different screens and different screen sizes and different screen resolutions will have an impact on how the web page looks. Okay, and if we just had one look for our web page, it might look great on a desktop, and you go, yes, this is the perfect format for my information. And then you might look at it on a mobile phone screen, which of course is much tinier, and you might go, oh, it looks awful. Okay, so what does separating the content and the presentation allow us to do? Well, it allows us, one of the reasons for doing that is because it allows us to create different looks for our content based on what we're presenting it on. Okay, so we can create a cascading style sheet for how it's supposed to look on a desktop and a laptop, and then we can create a cascading style sheet that tells it how to look on a mobile device or a tablet. All right, and so our information can look different depending on the device that's accessing it. Okay, so one of the reasons why we separate out the content and the presentation is because that makes that's a lot easier to do when we do that. Okay. I mean, the other reason, and some of you might have thought about this, is often when we're creating web pages, we're going to put lots and lots of web pages together to create a website. All right. And often what we want to do is we want all of those web pages to have a theme, to look the same. All right. So obviously, with by separating out the two, we can have lots and lots of different web pages. All right. But we only need one cascading style sheet. We only need one CSS. So we can just create one document that styles all of them rather than having to put the format in specifically in the content. Okay, so there are a couple of reasons why we break out the content and the presentation. Okay, so let's just carry on. I want to show you what a cascading style sheet looks like. Okay, so this is an example of a cascading style sheet. All right, and hopefully what you'll notice is that in my cascading style sheet I have tags. Well, so these match the tags that I use in my HTML. All right, they're not in the triangular brackets because that's not part of the syntax of a cascading style sheet. All right, but those are there to as tags. They match the tags in my document. Okay, so in my HTML document, I've used the head tag h1, and I've used the paragraph tag p. Okay, and then what you can see, hopefully you'll see what I'm doing here. If we have a look at the heading, I've got now what I've got. Okay, is attributes. So these are what I want all my headings to look like. Okay, so anytime I use the h1 tag in my content layer document, all right, this is going to be applied. So this formatting here is going to be applied. Okay, so you can see that all my headings, when I make them H1, okay, all of them are going to be aligned so that they're in the center. Okay, they're all going to be purple. All right, they're all going to be of the font family Candera. All right. Or they're all going to use the font Candera. Okay, you may want to investigate. That's an interesting question. Okay, is why is that called font family? All right, and actually you're supposed to specify more than one font there. Okay, so it's an interesting question for you to go and investigate and see if you can find out why we use font family and we put more than one font rather than just having one font there. Okay, I want you to think about that. All right, and then you can see the final one is my H1 heading is going to be size 32. All right, so what I'm able to do in the cascading style sheet is I'm able to use attributes of that tag, and I'm able to specify those attributes. So I've specified the alignment, the color, the font family, and the size. All right, and there are lots and lots of other attributes that you can set in your cascading style sheet, and that's outside the scope of what we're talking about in this lesson, really. But you can go away and look at what the different ones are. Okay, I would recommend you go and do that. W3 Schools is really, really good for that. Okay, and so I've done exactly the same thing. Hopefully you can see for the P tag. Again, I've set out my attributes. You can see again I've used the text align. I've centered it. This time I've changed the color. I've made it black. Okay, and this time I'm using the Arial font family. Okay, so anything contained within a P tag now, so any text inside the P tag will be formatted in that way. Okay, so what I'm going to show you next is I want to have a go. I just want to show you the impact of making changes to your cascading style sheet, and I just want you to see what happens, and then I want you to go away and have a play with cascading style sheet yourself. So I'm just going to show you how to do that. All right, so hopefully what you can see on the screen now, you've got two windows. All right, so in the right window is my web page, and then in the left window is my cascading style sheet. All right, so let's start with the background color. All right, so you can see I've got this dark blue for the background color. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to change that background color. All right, so I'm going to come up here and I'll make it one that we all know, which is white. Okay, so white is FF, FF, FF. All right. Now it's also worth you thinking about why is white FF. All right. Have a think about that. That's a bit of a sciencey question. So I'm just going to save my cascading style sheet. You need to save it every time you make a change, otherwise you won't see it. And now I'm going to pop to my web page, which is just here, and I'm going to refresh that. Okay, and that's quickly made a change to the background of my web page. Okay, so I've changed the background color, and that's obviously in the body tag. All right, now let's do the same with H1. So this save the orangutans bit at the top. Okay, that is that's the bit that's in as a heading, as heading 1. All right, so what I'll do is I'll change the color of that from tomato. Okay, and why don't we change that to green? All right, so again, I'm just going to file and save. Then I'm going to refresh my web page. Okay, and you can see that my heading is now green. All right, and look what I can do. So I've also got some other headings in there. I can't remember these are H2 or I think they must be H2. I've got HT in the cascading style sheet. So if I add the color attribute to H2, let's have a go at that. Let's say color equals, what color should we make it? Let's make it blue. Okay, and don't forget the semicolon. If you forget the semicolon, if you have any problems with the syntax in your cascading style sheet, you will have problems. It will cause you problems. So let's save that and refresh. Okay, and then you can see those headings, which are obviously use the H2 tag. Okay, are now blue. All right, let's do the same with the paragraph just to make sure you're happy with that. Let's change the color of the paragraph text to let's make it red. Okay, we'll go for really bad colors. Go and we'll just save the cascading style sheet and we'll refresh. And there you go. Okay, so hopefully what you can see is that I'm using the cascading style sheet to format the web page. All right, that's the end of this video. Okay, that was a brief introduction to cascading style sheets. Your job now is to go away and have a go at creating a web page and a cascading style sheet and formatting your web page using the cascading style sheet. All right, good luck. Thank you for watching.